Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Now Debate. I am Jared Walters with Richard Oliver, ever present. He's like the omnipresent person of this channel, and we're joined today by Jesse An Nichols George. And thanks again for joining us. Today's show is going to be about the code interpretations for the for the first 3 months of the year, and literally as we speak we're having lots of crazy news coming out of the US of the Capitol building being stormed. Literally, I've like an hour ago I was watching the Congress basically deliberating, going to their houses and deliberating the election results, and they were going to deliberate Arizona, and I've come away from the television to set up the stream, and by the time I've reconnected with the pair of you, there's been all hell has broken loose. So first of all, Anne, thanks you for coming on the show. Rich, I love you as always. Whoever wants to go first, I'm just going to open the floor, because at the moment, what the hell's going on?
Well, I've got to be honest, Anne, I was expecting to see you sporting a Mohican, a leather jacket, driving a Jensen Interceptor. Because it's freaking bonkers. What's going on? Where do you start with it? I'm getting phone calls just before we were going live.
And I am
saying, what's going on? I don't know. Does anybody know? I don't think the people who are doing it know what's going on, do they really? It's a bit... to say tensions are high is an understatement, I think, isn't it?
We are in what looks like the start of, we thought 2020 starting was bad. Then, going into this within the first week, and, America on the brink of goodness knows what. Anne, I feel for you. Obviously, you're not in DC. As you said, you're about an 8-hour drive or so away from the capital. But yeah, there's definitely been some craziness unfolding as we speak. And do you want to give us a little bit of an update as to what you know so far?
Well, and this isn't totally unexpected in many ways, what we have going on. What I know so far is that the same groups that were involved in riots previously, one key group, we know that they went in disguise as Trump supporters, and those are the ones that stormed into our Capitol building. Yesterday, I do know that they had bricks out on the streets in areas where there was no construction, just as they did in riots, and they also put out propane tanks for them to have available to throw. They did not want Trump supporters to have weapons, so those were confiscated coming in. We know that, and this all plays in with the codes, by the way, because there's a lot of lies, deception, manipulation energy present right now in the codes. It's all very deceiving in many ways. We do know that the Capitol was stormed, but that would be by the staged groups, and I don't want people to get confused, because while you could have a couple of straggler people in there, they're really the people that are being paid to storm it, and not the actual true Trump supporters. So I think that's important for people to keep in mind. They have moved Pence to a secure location, as well as another key person. There was a bomb threat out there already today, and we also had it's just been one thing after another, actually, since the elections last night, which were confirmed also fraudulent. And I was watching those last night, and the numbers were not mathematically possible to happen the way they were happening. So, here again, they played the same type of thing that they played back on November 3rd. And then in the last couple of days, we started getting the drips about Pence being a possible traitor. And and I mentioned this in my last Connecting Codes video. We're going to have to see whether he chooses to uphold the Constitution or not on today. And that would let us know where he stood on things and which side of the fence he's playing on. And he chose not to uphold the Constitution. And they got underway with things. And then, gradually everything kind of broke out from there. So it's a lot of chaos down there. The mayor of DC has put a restriction on the city from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. So they're going to try to shut this crowd of over 1 million people down come 6 o'clock. And I'm not sure how well that's going to work, because she also closed down all of the restaurants, most of the hotels. Of course, the people that came in from all over, they were prepared for this. They came geared to be able to camp if they have to. They came prepared for everything. So it's really an interesting space that we're in right now. I'm glad I'm this good, 8 to 12 hour distance away from that area.
And this is the issue, isn't it? It's like we had these reports last year, and they were coming out of mainstream media. So, this is not coming from the alternative. This is coming from different mainstream media sources of sort of different sort of weaponized materials then being brought into certain cities. And that was covered by several media sources last year. The difficulty is when you have such a group of people, you can have all sorts of different groups with different agendas embedding themselves within that as well, and that's true of any country, whether or not, for example, over here in the UK, you can have, for example, if you have a protest about sort of racism, for example, you might have your nationalists or your anti-nationalists or your different sort of groups of people, not just people that are part of the main group that we spoke of, but even other sort of different groups. And it's literally, it's like a domino effect. All it takes is sort of one sort of angry group of people, or one group of people that's been manipulated into something, or whether it's a bunch of, whichever way the people look at it. And I'm just trying to sort of look at it sort of from the balanced person's perspective, because most people watching mainstream media are going to sort of say, they're not going to see that sort of side of it. But, you're there, and, you're obviously getting the information firsthand, and obviously, reporting it back to us, and, reporting it back to the people that sort of follow you and that sort of thing. It's a very, it's a very, very grey situation, and it's a very difficult situation to kind of grasp. Especially when people will say, let's just say, for example, people say Trump's a sore loser. But if there is, this is the way I've explained it to people, when I watched that election on November 3rd, there was something wrong, and that should have been independently taken care of before anything else moved forward. That any claims like that should have been independently taken care of, and it's become a bit of, it's a very difficult situation to explain to people, and there's so much sort of upheaval surrounding all this now. It's a case of taking it day by day, because there's so many different angles and to look at, and you've said this with the codes as well, that we're gonna get sort of conflicting agendas, we're gonna get conflicting viewpoints and different things, and these situations will probably get worse before they get better. I don't know if that is something that you guys want to weigh in on, but that's kind of like where I'm sort of standing, and trying to sort of bring this to the people that who watch our channel and maybe not have an idea of what's going on from the inside in America.
Well, I can kind of sum it up, because my daughter likes her TikTok, right? Now on TikTok they are slating Trump, and she sent me a video, and it was of the leaked phone call that Trump's just been brought out about looking for 1,100 and something votes. And this, she sent me to this TikTok video, and it was a girl saying, "It's there, it's his voice," and she was like playing two parts of the story, and I said to my daughter, I said, "Well, it's not the whole speech. They've edited it. They only showed a bit of it. He's actually looking for the fraudulent votes from Biden." And you can see it, and I mean, that kind of manipulation is swaying people to make really rash decisions.
Yeah.
Now, and this is on every aspect of last year and this year, not just in regards to Trump and Biden and the Democrats and the Republicans and everything else. I'm on about everything that's gone on in our lives. There has been two very different but leading stories in all this. And, you know, it's with that, we can't control the information that's being put out there. We can't. It's not possible. And, you know, until that is realized, this divide is just gonna it's gonna be exponential. And you've got people. I've seen people over the last couple of weeks saying things on social media that are quite damning. They put you in a category. And you've got people saying about mask wearers and this and that, and who you vote for and who you like, and if you're in that category, they're really quite harsh about you personally. And you know, it's just for some reason people just can't see it for what it is. They can't understand that it's there. All the disinformation on both sides of the camps are there for a reason. It shouldn't be that, you know, you can't have 2 points and two completely conflicting stories. You can't have it, you know. This is with everything, and it's gonna just be, I don't know how we're gonna get out of it. I've been looking at it for weeks, and I just don't know how we're gonna get out of this. We're gonna have such an insane divide that is so dangerous, and until we realize it, it's gonna cause more harm than anything we faced last year. It's just the divide.
And you know, this is the thing is, it's not as so we had it yesterday when we posted our last Now Debate in a group on Facebook, and a gentleman decided not to sort of show our post and just made this scathing sort of post on both, attacking both me and you, just on the way we looked, basically. And it was just the fact that I'd put Trump's face on the thumbnail. Now, the reason why I put Trump's face on the thumbnail, and you know, if you look at the thumbnail, it's got other pictures on there as well, but the reason is because that news story, the particular leading news story we were using for that Now Debate, was surrounding Trump. If it was Boris Johnson, I would put Boris Johnson. If it was Joe Biden, I would put Joe Biden. If it was a bloody alien, I'd put an alien. If it was a ghost, I'd put a ghost. You know, that's the thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that just because I put the man's picture on the thing, I'm automatic. Now, I've said on this channel, and you've said, you know, I'm not particularly sure about my feelings on Trump. There's things he's done I like, there's things he's done I don't like. I know Donald Trump Jr., I don't like him. I find him, I don't know, I find him a bit too brash personally, but that's a personal opinion. That's my opinion of someone else, and that's just based on what I've seen. But, you know, it's not a case of, I wouldn't judge that person if I met them on it, or, you know, that sort of thing. It's just the fact that the story surrounded that particular key figure in public life. So that's why it was a legislation he signed. So that's why he's on the thumbnail. It wasn't, you know, it was asking a question. Is it truth, or is it misdirection? Is it misleading?
And you know, the fact he said we were irritating, which is absolute nonsense, because we are really lovable, Jack.
Well,
you know, we're adorable. You know,
it's true. It's true, and I've seen it even on mine, where they just grab something in the headline or a picture, and they have not even listened to what I had to say. Like in my last Connecting Codes video, that was definitely the case, and part of my title, I put in Pelosi is out. And of course, she did get reelected in. But instead of people knowing what I actually said about that situation or actually listening to the video, they just automatically said, look, she was in, you're wrong. And it's like, no, because you didn't listen to what I had to say and what the one thing is that could put her in. And so it's been very interesting. Yes, the tensions are rising. The codes definitely show that as something that's going on, and we're gonna have some of that going on for a while. I've talked about this in the last time I came in December, how 2021 is going to wave in and out of these different things. Unexpected things happening, deception things happening. It's insane. And we knew this was going to be a crazy month as we came into having to deal with this ongoing election stuff. And yes, if the electors had been ethical to start with and said, look, something's wrong in our elections, we want the elections to be right, it doesn't matter which side of the fence you're on, you should want them to be right. And the only way you don't want them to be right, or the only reason you don't want them to be right, is if you're doing something that is unethical and out of integrity.
And that counts for both. And that counts for both sides. That counts for both sides.
And people try to make it party, and what they have to understand is this is not just about Biden or Trump or Kamala Harris or Obama or whoever else. This is about much bigger things that are happening throughout our whole world. This is about, much bigger pieces that are at stake here, and they want to take these pieces out on individuals that it goes beyond it. They don't want to go to the source of who's causing the pain. They just, want to blame whoever's present, basically, and not really looking any deeper at that. And I think that, what's very interesting is in the codes, as I mentioned earlier with Pence, and, the codes, I did a whole thing on him in the last Connecting Codes video as part of it, and how he could go either way. And knowing this integrity, well, flat out in the codes, the angel codes that started today, right in the very first sentence, it says lies and betrayal are on the forefront during this time. So when I combine that with the struggle that he was in to start with, on his own personal codes for today, and in regarding all of this, it's no wonder he chose the betrayal path, really. Because that extra little piece just pushed him over the edge. And yet, even though I can sit here and say, I don't like what he did, and this creates a whole nother mess, is it totally unexpected? No, it's not totally unexpected. They kind of figured some of this was going to go down. And they were trying to give him the chance to come around the last couple of days through some various messages that were being sent back and forth. And yet this is the path he chose. And I could sit here and say, well, let's look at it as an individual person. Do you want to deal with Trump's wrath, or do you want to deal with the CCP's wrath? And he may have looked at it and said, there's nothing Trump is going to do to me that's going to be worse than the CCP, and maybe I can still keep my family safe if I take the corruption path.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that may have been where his head is. Now, I don't know. I'm just, taking a shot at this, really, in this thing. But when I look at the codes and I look at everything and I look at, well, if I was sitting in his position, what might be going through my head? And that is a piece that would be going through my head. Whose wrath do I want to, I'm trapped. Whose wrath do I want to endure?
Well, in a sense, he's kind of damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. Really, I was watching him earlier, and he's in a very unenviable position, really. And I don't know the sort of ins and outs of the Constitution or what he did that kind of went against what all I seen was he was calling out the states, and someone raised an objection for Arizona. and he basically said, was it signed by a congressman? They said yes. Was it signed by a senator? He said yes. It was the congressman for that state. So the congressman for Arizona was actually bringing his, basically he won that election. He actually got re-elected, and that was one of the sort of the things that's been brought up, was the fact that the congressman was re-elected, but yet the Democratic president wins. And I suppose people complain about the British system, but the British system is a lot more simpler. You've got a race of 2 or 3 candidates. Whoever gets the most votes wins, and whatever party they belong to, that's who gets the votes. It's a very convoluted. The American system is a very convoluted system that takes, like, literally, when we have an election in the UK. If the election happened today, by tomorrow we would know who would be running the country, and that person would be running the country. In America, it's a much different and a much more convoluted sort of process. And, there's, I suppose, like any document, like any, and I suppose if you have any lawyers or anything that watch this, law is as much as there's like the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. It's only it does come down to interpretation. It's like, I went through a kind of process a couple of months ago, and I realised this. It's like, 99% of what we kind of, the structures we've built our society on is just based on perception and interpretation. I might read a document, let's just say the Bible, for example, and I could read, I'm not being contentious here at all, but I could read it and just take it as a story. Someone else could take it as something they want to live their life by. Someone else might read it and think something completely different, and that's the difficult thing, because, and I've always said this, the media, government, institutions sort of have to work on the basis of the perception that the world is solid, that things are as they are, and always will be and always have been as they are, and that's how they are. But it's not the case. It's like science. Science is constantly evolving to the point of, like, by the time a scientific paper has been pre-approved and peer-reviewed and all the rest of it, and is published, and then actually gains, notoriety after being published, after it gets picked up by the press or whatever, so the public know about it, it's probably already obsolete. It's just that's the sort of, that's for me, that's kind of one of the things that's being brought to the surface, is it's the fundamentals of how we as a society interpret our structures in which we base how we behave towards one another. And and within that we are seeing the various forms of let's just say corruption, or things then, shall I say, that are not benefiting the individuals or the collective. And when they are benefiting individuals, they are benefiting individuals who, how can I put this, they're benefiting individuals in the wrong way in many cases. Not all cases, but in many cases. And that's, we're kind of falling into a really sort of grey area here. And it's come to the point of, like, even now, if they overturn the election tomorrow, would the people who didn't vote for Trump accept Trump? It's a really difficult situation that's happening now in America.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it definitely is, Jared. And if they had stuck to the Constitution is actually quite clear on things.
Right.
The problem is along the way, and this is what's getting exposed in all of this mass chaos and confusion, is it's showing all of these layers of where corruption has entered the scene.
Yeah.
And so through these other little acts, and that's what Pence chose to follow, was this other election act, as opposed to really sticking to the Constitution. That's where it created an issue. And if people want to understand a little bit more about that, again, they can go into that most recent Connecting Codes video that I did just in about a week ago, and they'll get a little more information on that and how that process works. And so that was part of really the going astray. And I think that this is where people are starting to struggle, because there's a lot of people, for example, who never have gotten the truth to start with because of our media sources and what's been presented to them, and being locked into these different things. So they haven't really seen, I think there's a lot of people actually out there probably that haven't even seen the videos of how some of these things went down, and they haven't seen the actual proof of things. So, I can sit there and say from my own perspective, let's say all I watched was CNN or something like that, that if that's the only news source I got, I would probably have a really different perspective of things than what I've gotten. And of course, there's so much confusion being thrown in, because now one of the things is, again, infiltration and going in, and all of a sudden everybody's got intel information. Everybody has insider information, which they don't, but they say they do, because that's going to sell their show, or that's going to sell their radio broadcast.
Exactly, yeah.
And what people need to do, and this is what I do, and this is what I'm telling people all the time about stuff, even if it's somebody that you listen to all the time and you trust their information and you trust their resources and you trust the information that they're giving you, go and look it up. Because if what they're saying is true, you will be able to verify it somehow. You will be able to verify it by a reputable source. And so, when I look at something and they, a lot of times they'll put something out and they'll make it look like somebody's tweet. Well, I will go directly to that person's Twitter page that it's supposed to be from, and I will go through all their tweets. And if I can't find that tweet on there, I call out people that are, alleged truthers. And I'm like, look, this is hurting our movement. This is not, it doesn't help us to perpetuate these lies, whether you think it's truth or not. And it's got to be verifiable for people. So I always encourage people that, because if it is, you'll be able to find that, whether that's in Newsmax or OANN or Breitbart or, whatever the news source is. Of course, we do have to watch some of the main sources for news, because they're very distorted, whether you're talking CNN or Fox or whatever. You really have to sort through it, but you can verify the information. And, so much of this, when I start to look at the codes and I look at what's in the codes, for example, for January, there's a lot of absent-minded energy. There's a lot of need to hold divine connection. There's a lot, it doesn't favor decision-making. The mental mind is not clear in things. So is it any wonder that things are going to be blown out of proportion? Is it any wonder that things are going to do what we're seeing happen right now today in our
absolutely.
events?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we sorry, Jazz, we covered a story about they just teleported, right? Information. Now, we covered the story on the Now channel, and I was looking, and the amount of people who were saying they teleported. Somebody said they teleported a chimpanzee. Somebody said they teleported a bomb, right? They teleported like Star Trek. And I was thinking, I was looking at the comments, and the amount of people who were going, oh, isn't that awful? Oh, they shouldn't be allowed to do that, see? No, they just believed that information. And I checked about 14 different sources, and we were the only ones that actually read the actual article. The truth of it said they teleported information across 27 miles. But and there was people commenting saying, oh my God, isn't it awful? And I was thinking, that's the problem, what you just stated there, and it is a problem that you will take in information and not verify it. You just go, oh. And that is getting to a point in society with this social media type thing is just getting out of hand, that people will just take anything on face value is balmy. It is a really serious problem.
And with so much in the codes right now, Richard, that is surrounding, again, the lies, the manipulation, the distortions, not having a clear mind, we have to be very, very careful. And this is why I look and I watch and I do a lot of observing of people. And when I get stuff, even if it's somebody who is in a truth movement who 98% of their stuff is real, the way I look at it is the people who are really real will provide links in their broadcasts where you can go and look it up yourself. And I tell people, it's like, I go right to the government pages. I don't go just off of somebody's link even. A lot of times I will go directly to the government page. Can I pull up that executive order that they're claiming was signed? Can I, access this information myself? And I will, follow the people who are directly involved in things, and then see how different pieces of information are matching up. So absolutely. And we have to do this because right now too, people want to hear things because they're being pushed to the limits. The codes show this, they're being pushed to the limits, and they just want a lot of stuff to go away. They want life to be more peaceful. They want it to be calmer. I wish I could just say it is all going to go away, but it's not going to go away. It's not going to go away with a shot in your arm. It's not going to go away by just removing a mask. There's more to it, and we have to get down and be willing to look at what's actually happening in our world. We have to be willing to admit the corruption that is there before we can heal the corruption. If you don't, if it's like you cannot heal your body if you don't admit that there's something wrong with your body. It's the same kind of concept in there. And we are going to be seeing stuff come down the line. We are going to be looking at all of these things. But one of the big things that comes up over the next couple of months in the codes and shows up right in January is because so many people have been ignoring the truth. They have been ignoring the corruption that's right in front of their faces, all over the place. And of course, this is blowing up. Why in the U.S. elections? Well, because they are a mess to start with. But this is happening all over the world. They've used these same methods to infiltrate all over the world, and so it does affect everybody around the world. But one of the things in the January influences is that people have to get jolted into reality by danger right now because they've procrastinated, they've chosen not to pay attention, they don't want to acknowledge what is happening right in front of their face. Maybe it's because they're not getting correct information, maybe they're not getting the truth, and maybe they're pushing it away, whatever it is. Maybe they just say, I just want to live in my light and love bubble and I don't want to see any of this, I don't want to acknowledge it's happening. And but the reality of it is when we take these paths, then it's got to get harsher and harsher. And now we are at that point this month that it's going to take dangerous situations. It's going to take extreme measures for us to wake up. And that is the energy pattern we're in. So this means that, we're going to have some serious trauma coming up. We're going to have some serious hardships coming up and big challenges to face. And we've got to face them. And if we're willing to face them, if we are willing to acknowledge what's going on and stop ignoring it, we can get through things. We can start to see the things that we want to see. And in the midst of this, some of the good things that are going to come out this month is that we're going to start seeing some of these greedy people who truly are behind it. Get outside of Trump, get outside of Biden, get outside of these frontline players and get to the deeper layers of who's the cores back there. By whatever names you're going to call them, if that's CCP, if that's Gates, if that's Soros, or whoever that is. And we need to get in there, because what's going to happen is the greedy people are going to get left behind. That's one of the things that's coming up. People are tired. This ego thing, the pride thing, the I'm better than everybody else thing, it's not going to work. And so we can start to see that collapse if we're willing to look at the truth, if we're willing to admit what we're actually dealing with. And a lot of people don't, because they've spent basically all of 2020 in lockdowns and shutdowns and restrictions and all of this stuff, being desensitized, being reprogrammed, accepting the confinements, accepting these, and these programmings that are coming in. And now people are not thinking clearly, so they're going to have to go within. They need to start listening to their gut. They need to start listening to their heart, and they need to come into the centered of divine energy or divine alignment, whatever you want to say, God energy. And they're going to have to say, okay, we're going to have to take hold and take some reasonable action. Is there a peaceful path we can take? Is there an option? And again, people are going to have to look beyond these veils of illusions, because the illusions are also strong. And that's where, again, you got to come inside, because your mind is not necessarily going to mentally always see everything or always make wise decisions. You've got to check in within, and don't make it just the way you want it to go. You got to be blatant, gut out, honest. This is a learning period, and this is our chance to not repeat the mistakes of our past as a collective human race, as a country, as a state, on all these different aspects. We got to learn from what's happening and stop perpetuating it.
Well, I wanted to quickly go over the codes for December and what actually came through here. And maybe you guys can help me out here, because with the nature of the way the codes were and what you said about them in December, kind of made it a little bit hard for it to actually reflect it through the media like I normally do. And so I have got a couple of examples here of things that you said. So I'm just going to do a quick... For me, personally, a lot of what you said here, right, was absolutely on the money for December. You said there was a lot... so basically I just making the point is that there's a lot of stuff that was on a personal basis. There was a lot of things about like asking what's next. So basically hope for the future. People asking about hope for the future, but also people struggling with the year that had basically just gone by. Well, you've seen a lot of this around obviously the New Year's. People were sort of recapping the New Year and saying the years this was the year to forget, so to speak. 2020 was the year to forget. And one of the things I comments I made, and I think I made this on this channel, is we don't want to forget this year, because as much as there has been, and I'm talking about myself personally, as much as there has been upheaval in my own life with the lockdown, obviously I have had people connected to me who have fallen very ill with regards to this virus and all the rest of it. But it's also been a year where I have actually been challenged personally with regards to like my disability, and I've actually thrived. And I believe, there's many examples with each video that we've done on this channel that showed that we've thrived. I've connected with different people, connected with new people, connected with people from different parts of the world, and spoke to people from different parts of the world. So I can attribute that to myself personally. You also said about the stresses coming in. Now, what I thought was very interesting, right, and without sort of going too political on this, or too sort of, into whichever narrative, okay? Let's just say the breakthrough that happened, what the mainstream media is calling the breakthrough that happened in December. Now, the ambiguous nature of that is the fact that it could possibly, because we at the moment, I can't personally, one of you two might be able to call me on this, say it's not a breakthrough, but it's one of them things where it's a success. So let's just say, for example, the shot then that was developed, the Pfizer shot was developed, was absolutely legit, up and up. It does what it says on the tin, right? Even just by being done so fast, it's actually been both a success and also going to cause problems by being so successful so quickly, because that success so quickly is going to cause people to go, I'm not so sure about that, is going to cause people to have reservations, fears, and all different sides of it. So that kind of measured it for me with the codes, because you said it was like there was a lot of people are celebrating that, whether rightly or wrongly, but a lot of people are seeing that as a ray of hope. But there's also like the other side of it as well. It's like this almost like this double-edged sword energy that, and you said this with the chords, there would be sort of like successes where it was held as a success, so I'm just taking it on face value for a second. But there's also would be stresses surrounding it. And it was like, I found that was the closest I could get from just going on the mainstream. So just going on what's in the newspapers, what's going on, the TV, that sort of thing. That was the closest I could find there. But there's obviously other things as well that's come up. But for me personally, there was a lot of like, how can I put it, home truths that came out. Like what you said, with regards to like what you said with regards to what people are going through now. There was a lot of like personal realizations that I found in December for me. Personally, there was like a lot of like there was a lot of breakthroughs I went through on a personal basis, and I'm sure there'll be time once I finish this, if you guys want to call me up on some of these points. But you also said mass mistrust of the media, even to the point when you said about there being more mistrust of the media and established organisations. Well, the BBC's Christmas Day television viewing figures fell 30% this year, which is crazy given the fact that in the UK, most of the UK was under a lockdown. And because we went into lockdown literally the week of Christmas. And you did say there would be a lot of that, sort of a lot of upheaval towards the end of December, where the entirety of the UK went into lockdown, and obviously there was a lot of sort of news stories surrounding that. Success. Now the successes as well, where you said about success against corruption. Now this is slightly out of December, but maybe just about there. But yesterday, and I just want to bring this point up, yesterday, a national radio broadcaster in the UK actually got taken off YouTube. Their channel was taken down without any sort of news from Google, to the point of, now this channel are outspoken. They have talked about the effect that the government's policies are having on people, their businesses, all the rest of it, but they take a balanced approach. They take the other side of it as well. They talk about both sides of the argument, and YouTube literally took them down. And to the point where actually government ministers in the UK were actually speaking out about it. One in particular, Michael Gove, as much as he's like a wet fart, went on talk radio himself and said, I might not agree with the likes of Peter Hitchens, but he is a respected journalist, for example. Yes, he is a lockdown skeptic, but he deserves to have his voice heard. And, there's a very sort of fine line there. And like that was crazy, because it's a national broadcaster. It's regulated by the UK Regulatory Authority, which is known as Ofcom here in the UK. And like it or not like it, whether you like talk radio or don't like talk radio, right? Whether you agree with them or don't agree with them, the fact that national broadcaster that has, a public is a public service type broadcaster, or a national broadcaster regulated by the sort of the broadcasting authorities, was taken off YouTube without any explanation. And it took, once people started speaking, it took 8 hours for them to put it back. And the excuse they give was, because of certain things we have to act quickly, and then we didn't realise that it was for documentary, scientific or artistic purposes. So once we put it back. It was like, a national broadcaster being taken off air. You've also said about arguments around families. Now, unless anyone else has come across this, I've not seen many things about the royals or key families coming in here in the last sort of couple of weeks. But again, with everything that happened in the UK surrounding Christmas, there would have probably been a lot of tension within families, because certain people wouldn't be able to meet as they would have normally done on Christmas they might not be able to see loved ones they would have normally been able to see. So that kind of maybe not factored in the way when it was originally interpreted back in August when you did this reading, Anne. But it's definitely on the same lines. Hardships come up and that humble us, and again, I couldn't really find much in the sort of mainstream to sort of back this up, but in my personal life, every single hardship I went through in December taught me something. It taught me something with regards to, and I learnt a lot. Even on this channel, we had different guests that came on this channel that, were asking us questions or had things going on around them, which challenged the way that we thought of the paranormal, which is obviously the main thing that we do for this channel. Going to have to stand up to bullies. Well, I think I'm not going to say no more about that because I think we've kind of covered it. Because I do feel they do kind of overlap. It's not like sort of directly in December. It's like it can happen a little bit after or a little bit before. I found when you give these predictions. Jealous people attacking competition energy, upheaval in nature. Well, we had a storm in the UK basically, which was there was wind like the likes I've never seen a couple of weeks ago. The weather we had around Christmas week was biblical, to be perfectly honest. And some silly biddy, I won't name names, and there'll be a video coming out of that soon, went storm chasing in it. A lot braver person than I am. And the final point that I wanted to make was a lot of it, and obviously you'll see this for the new year, is moving into the next phase. So moving into that next phase, and I think you've covered that a little bit here with that kind of, because it doesn't matter which way you're looking at these situations, the key thing to bring back to here is that we each have to take responsibility for our actions, and we have to take responsibility for the actions of ourselves and the people around us, and the same goes for the people around us need to take responsibility for themselves and us. And that's what it's coming down to. And the course that we have set for ourselves, especially over the last 20 years, since the advent of social media, since the advent of, personality politics on a scale like none other these days, it's led us to this point where we are now truly, and I've said this for the last 6 to 8 months, we are now truly at the Red Sea moment. And I think I've talked enough, so if any of you guys want to weigh in on December and help me out perhaps. I did bring up as well that we had you said about a lot of truth coming out to the surface. We have had so many people now you said about God energy coming in. We've had so many key people actually speaking out about things like UFOs. We've had Harvard professors. We've had the Israeli space minister who talked about the Galactic Federation, being a thing. There's so many of these different things now coming out. It's actually really hard to keep up with, and that's just in the paranormal field. Never mind anything else.
Go on, Anne. You can take it.
I was just thinking the same thing. I was like, oh, Richard will jump in there.
I can't say it's balmy, so mine's a different story. Mine is, but I think you.
I think in some of this, Jared, and it's true. The codes are going to hit. They'll hit in the outer world. They'll hit in the inner world. Some things tend to be a little more in our personal circles than world event circles. Family arguments is one of those. And I think a lot of people have seen that. At least a lot of people have expressed that to me, that the family arguments have gotten stronger. Maybe some more division happening in the family, more arguments over what's happening in the world, for example. That's stemmed some more tensions in the family arena in particular. And I think it's always important for us to keep in mind that there are going to be things that come out in the media or that are reported on that are happening that we don't necessarily view as a success by traditional standards, but even what appears to be a failure is a success in many ways, or can be in many ways. So, for example, back in December in the US, when we had things going happening here with the elections and the court systems and the cases where they wouldn't even listen to them, or things like this that were just block after block, and people would say, well, that's not a success. But what they don't realize is within that piece that's presented as a failure, there was a success, because it was always a learning process. It was always it was one more piece of showing, for example, the corruption, one more layer of it getting exposed along the way. And, some things are always going to be overlapping because we have these bigger patterns in place when we look at the code. So it is natural that we might see something appear to filter over into January from December, but those pieces are active in January's code somewhere too. So like we have these the aspect of leaders coming together. We're starting to see that. We've already this month seen aspect the codes talk about trying to move into more generating more peace, or a focus being put onto peace. And we saw that as Saudi Arabia and the Middle East, they have signed agreements there that
yes, I forgot about that. Yeah,
that has basically never been done. I mean, it's just it's incredible that these rivalries are being dismantled at this time. And so I think that that's kind of a key piece. So here again, yes, we have to expand our perceptions, and sometimes we don't realize that we're making progress when the chaos is getting stirred up. Just as I mentioned earlier, the chaos is being stirred up here right now, but we don't realize that that's actually in some ways a good thing, because that's going to get us to stop procrastinating. That's going to jolt us into another layer of awakening. That's going to jolt us into another layer of awareness of what's happening, because as these things continue to drag on, I mean, if people had just in the beginning said, I get it, I can see where all of this is going, we're going to stop this now, and not procrastinated and not just sat back and said, oh, well, let's just see where this goes, there's several things that may not have gone down.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
People didn't do that.
No.
And so they said, well, I can deal with this later, I can deal with that, or I can make this adjustment, not realizing what they were really doing in that process. And now they actually have themselves placed in danger. You talk about the restrictions getting heavier. Back in December, the restrictions in my state, for example, it's not in every state, not every state did this, but my state, New York, California, they all came down heavier again on the restrictions with some very, very crazy stuff, to the point that I now have to drive 60 miles to shop because I'm not allowed in a store here. And if a store owner wants, because I can't wear a mask. So they removed people with medical exemptions from being able to enter a store now. And so I actually filed with my state for something they were putting together to bring against our governor, because it violates disability acts. It violates the rights of people with disabilities. And so I actually had a file in, but if I tried to go in a store now, I have been physically blocked from stores. I've been escorted out of the stores right after the restrictions got tougher at the end of December. And I cannot get medical help now because I cannot wear a mask through the main center. So you see, these regulations did come down. They definitely did clamp down harder. And they could call, if they wanted to, they could call the police on me and have me thrown in jail for up to 6 months and fine me just for not wearing a mask in a store. Because I can't wear a mask because it shuts down my breathing and I'll pass out.
Mm. Jesus Christ. Yeah. It's just...
I don't know where the line is. This is the problem, and I think, in all honesty, in regards to all this with the virus and everything, right? Common sense with any virus should prevail, right? Because if you wash your hands and you look after yourself and you take the right vitamins and everything else, then it shouldn't have been a problem. It's only a problem. The two worst places at the moment for this virus is America and the UK, and other countries are celebrating without the vaccine. So I mean, it's where it becomes to that extreme. I think is then we have to look at it. We had this conversation, me and Jared, about the censorship on everything. When the censorship is that extreme, there's a problem. There's just a problem with that. Regardless of the information and however they want to spin it, or whether you're putting out information that's dangerous, the government has acted more dangerous in the UK standpoint in this pandemic than any other country in the world, because they have gone back and forth and back and forth, and literally they opened the school for one day. Now, I mean, with everything, every step of this has been insane to watch. But I mean,
the simple thing is this, right? If when this hit back in early 2020, we're an island. Close the damn borders.
Yeah.
Just close the damn borders. You say, right, anyone who's out of the country at the moment, you have to go into quarantine before you come back in, and you have to make sure, so you're okay before you come back. You come back in. We have islands near our island where we could probably do this, right? We have things called boats and ships that we could have used for people, right? And or we could have made arrangements with other countries elsewhere, through embassies and things, to close the borders literally for a month, maybe 2 months, right? Except for imports and exports. And literally, it's like if it was a clear, if it was a clear message from the start, we probably would have been out of this by now. Because the ones that locked down, it seems, and I'm not entirely up on it, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but it does seem the ones that are locked down harder to begin with, who literally just said, right, basically a virus thrives on human contact, so we have to, for the next 2 months or whatever, lock down, so we can make sure the cases stay at a low level, and when we release the lockdown, we know that people can operate and go about their lives safely. Instead of like, oh, well, this can open, but that can't. That can do that, but that can't. You could do that there, but you can't do that there. It was like the Matt Lucas thing that he did. It was like, go to work, but don't go to work. Stay at home, but if, yeah. Do you know what I mean? And that's what's been the most dangerous, is the fact that the information was so just unclear, and this wasn't acted upon soon enough. And people slated. One thing I will say in Trump's defence, that people slated Trump for closing. That's what he did. He closed the borders. He stopped people coming into the US from different countries where this outbreak was happening, which is what you should do. We're an island. We shouldn't be facing this. No. And this is the difficult sort of situation, and it's like, even if we just take this on face value, we know that these things do happen. So we should have had some kind of preparedness for it to a certain extent. But it's gone now. So it's something that we are going to have to sort of unpack as we go through this, because it's got to that situation now where there's such a divide where, like, even between me and you, Rich, we've seen different things. Like, I've had family members who have been desperately ill, and actually some family members and friends of friends have died from this. And from my perspective, the last thing I want to see is all these different opinions going round, because quite frankly, I find it, from a personal and emotional standpoint, it's a really, really hard thing to do. But yet, on the flip side, if you have a medical exemption for wearing a mask, if you have a medical diagnosed problem of which having something that's in front of your breathing, blocking your breathing, which would think you shouldn't be penalised for that either if it's a genuine medical exemption. And that's the danger. That's the danger there, because there've been so many precedents that's been set, and it's just as we have said so many times, it's held a mirror up to the world. It's held a mirror up to the world in which we live, into the way we live our lives, and it's created something, and it's created something now where getting to the actual truth about this is going to be next to impossible from what I'm feeling at the moment, because whichever way you could say, oh, that's the truth, I could probably build an argument for the complete opposite. And like you said this at the top of the show, that there's been, these sort of conflicting narratives which have come about from people's behaviour, how people have seen the world, how people have, the information has been put out, the lack of information has been made available, and the lack of communication, because that's the other thing, is the communication and the ability of our media to actually ask these questions, which people genuinely have, has been horrific. It's been terrible. I have never seen such piss poor reporting from the mainstream media in my life.
Well, and I think that there is part of that confusion is definitely coming from where people want to believe the media still, because that was the programming that, they have the concept that media is supposed to share the news, and they're not supposed to be taking orders or following certain things. So it doesn't cross a lot of people's minds. Sadly, out there, there's still a lot of people that believe that that's what they do, and they don't understand the connections that are layered into all of that. But what I have to come back to with people is that, whether there's stuff going around the world or not, and our immunities are reduced right now, and we're going to have to learn how to take care of our health in more positive, better ways, and we're going to have to do this in order to move through. And whether people like it or not, there are people out there that do not have the best interest of humanity in mind, and they are in wealthy positions and power positions, and it is hard to look at these things. However, that being said, we have so much power within ourselves, our choices that we make. And whether you like somebody else's opinion or not, whether their opinions are different than yours or not, okay, we have to be able to maintain choice and an aspect of freedom.
Yes.
We can come together and we can operate and be responsible. But again, I encourage people, go in and really understand. Don't just take the news at face value or an article, no matter, whether it's mainstream or not, and understand how the components actually work, and ask the questions of, does this really make any sense? No matter what it is in life, does this really make sense? Does this really add up? Because we so easily accept something as being okay or making sense when it really doesn't, when you start to break it down. And so, and so many times wording is used to deceive people, to lead them down one train of thought, but that is not what's actually been said. And this is where it's going to get tough this year. We've talked about that last month, and I mentioned in the codes for January, of course, that miscommunications can happen. Our mind is not totally clear. There could be some mishaps in people when they're speaking. They might not use the exact right word. And so, here again, this is where we have to look at the bigger pieces. But our choices in the first 3 months of this year are very, very critical to what goes down, to what direction we go, not only here in the U.S., but all around the world. And those choices come down to us as an individual. We can't allow ourselves to get into that mindset of my choice, my voice has no meaning, no importance, and
Yeah.
it won't make any difference, because it does. Every choice you make has a difference. If you allow yourself to be suffocated, squashed, have your rights taken away, then, you're going to have to deal with the consequences of those choices. If you choose to say, look, I can't support this business because of the choices they're making, that's okay. I don't have to hate them. I don't have to be in division, but I also don't have to lend my energy to that. And so I think we forget, but we are at some very, very critical points. And the reason things seem so absurd is those people who have been observing, they've been paying attention along the way, they can see the absurdity. They've been watching the progression. But for those who haven't seen what's happening yet, for those who haven't questioned things yet, it's going to have to get more and more absurd until they can see it, until they finally hit that point that it's like, I'm done with this. I can't take this anymore. Or this, it finally really clicks in that none of it makes sense to them. And, again, it doesn't matter whether you're talking about a disease or a connection or whatever it is. And partnerships are going to be very important. So we're going to see a lot of partnership things getting exposed. We just saw that here today in the U.S. We saw where Pence's partnership is lying. It's not with the president. And that doesn't mean that he thinks the president is wrong. It just means that there's other things at play in his personal life that maybe he's trying to protect or afraid of or scared of, and he's choosing a different alliance. We're seeing that he actually has an alliance with something that is dangerous for our country. And it's not like these people aren't being given a chance to come clean, in situations, whether you're talking your personal life or whether you're talking world events. These doors are open, but we're going to have to stand up and take a stance on some things. We're going to have to look deeper, because there are going to be periods over the next 3 months where we're really going to start to see who the true leaders are and who we aren't. I've talked back in December, I believe, about how 2021, we're going to see a lot of turnover in world leaders. We're going to be seeing the corruption happen and brought down in pieces. But it's kind of like people will not get the corruption that is there until they can see it. So it's almost like you got to have this chaos in some ways in order for people to see it so that it can be removed. Some of this is so underneath things that are happening, it's got to be brought out where it can be seen for people, because when they see it, and this comes back to something, Jared, you said earlier, that you're not going to forget it. When you go through these chaoses, when you go through these hard experiences, and this is part of what the codes show about this time, is that it's going to take hard experiences that are going to have to be faced in order to move us into the wisdom, so to say. And when we look at these aspects of things, then we've got to realize that those layers, those stagnant periods in between the chaos, people can tend to get impatient and think nothing's happening, but the corruption is going to come down, and we are going to see this turnover, and we are going to see who's partnered. So it's almost like what we're in right now in many places of the world, in many situations, is we're seeing the division, and eventually that division is going to bring us back into unity. That is what I'm seeing. But it's almost like we have to go through the division, because we have to see what's breaking us apart before we can come together. And we have to be able to realize that, we're really, for most people, I would say most people, regardless on what side of the fence they're on, we're really fighting for the same thing. But we can't forget where we've come from. We can't forget what we've been through. We can't let that go, because that fight never, in some ways, stops. You're always going to have to be standing up for this. You're always, to a certain extent, going to have to be on guard for the infiltration. You're always going to have to be alert and aware. Does that mean you're always going to be in stress and trauma? No. Yes, we're going to be going in and out of trauma this year, and we're going to see it in this first 3 months. But at the same time, you do need to remember, because it's when people forget that they become lax, that they become too relaxed, and that they start letting things happen over and over again. These cycles have happened over and over again in time, but now we need to start making bigger choices that is not just about remedying it for now and maybe the next 2 generations, but that is going to be bringing a more lasting way of not having that corruption come in and take over like we're seeing now in our world.
So I'm aware that we've been broadcasting for about an hour now, so do you want to go into the breakdown month by month, or have you done any notes? I know obviously there's a lot of things going on around you at the moment. I don't know what sort of preparation you did for this session. So I'm just aware that time is ticking. So shall we go into a bit deeper into sort of the codes for January, February, and March then?
Yeah, and let's kind of grab a couple of the key big things that we should see more in around the world happening, because they're going to apply to all 3 months. So let's start there, and then I'll kind of break down some highlights for the months on things. In the bigger patterns around the world, now these are the things that sometimes we can not notice as much, but their energy is actually stronger. They're actually the stronger pattern that's present. And choices, what I was just talking about, choices are really, really critical. So again, whether it's your own personal life, whether you're involved in a group, our choices as a collective is really important right now. So we need to really consider what we're putting our energy into, what we're putting our thoughts on, what we're supporting, and to really take a little extra time with choices. On one hand, we don't, again, want to procrastinate or wait too long, because that can put us into danger. But we do want to give some careful thought, go within, check with your gut, check with your soul self. Does this line up with divine principles? And go from there. We're going to have to be careful, because again, we're going to have to watch our impatience level during this time. People will tend to have that frustration coming up. What we are going to see that I think is really promising is we're going to see more and more people being less impressed by people in money and power positions. And I think that we're kind of hitting one of those pinnacle points that people are said, you know what, I'm done. I'm done with these people in these power positions, or that are holding a lot of money, like our world bankers or whoever it is. And, they're looking at these people saying, yeah, well, while you're sitting there having your gardener work, you're not really in the same kind of lockdown that I'm in, because the same rules are not applying, or things like this. So we are going to see the illusion coming down around money, which I think is going to be a really good thing, because that's going to bring people back into their authenticity. That's going to help them face the challenges, the burdens that they're feeling. We do definitely need to safeguard. The codes are warning we need to safeguard against technology advances. Now, does that mean every technology advance is a bad thing? No. But what it means is we're going to have to look very carefully at who is rolling out what and who is behind those technological advances. So, even if you look at something like the shots that are being distributed around the world, we want to look at, is it coming from this company or that company? Because some companies are less corrupt than other companies.
Well, quite interesting. I heard today the one that's been done in the UK is actually being done non-for-profit. It's being sold cost price, and they will not make money out of it until they will once the pandemic is over. But basically, which it's not really going to be needed after that anyway, because obviously or unless obviously it becomes like a yearly thing, which they haven't talked about. But another success that we mentioned about December as well was the UK Parliament did rule out mandating, which was good for I suppose us on this side of the pond. But I was looking at the one that came out, the Oxford one that came out into that earlier, and they are not actually making any money off it.
But this is where we have to be careful, because they can claim to not be making money on the front end, but there can be things on the back end. Like in the US, they were given billions of dollars along the way, and there are profits being made even if there's no charge to the people for them. And we have to look at, again, the corrupt players that are in it, what's beyond it. Normally shots would be of this type of nature would be centered on actually a live virus, for example, to build immunity. But in this case, they're not using the actual virus. So we have to start questioning, is that really going to do anything? And they've already got the warnings out that this is not going to necessarily stop you from getting it, and it's not going to stop you from transmitting. And so we need to look at the bigger layers, because there are gains beyond that surface piece of whether anybody's charged for it or not. But so again, we have to look at who's in charge behind the iron curtain, so to say, of things. We also are going to be in for some challenges. We're going to have to really become responsible, not only in the choices that we make, but the actions that we're taking. Lots of rise and fall of leaders going on. I mentioned that. We're going to see some countries drop into crisis, probably some maybe natural disasters, emergency situations arising, and that can stem a whole chain of things that we could see come up. We need to pay attention. Who is putting people before profit? Who is doing the so-called right thing out there? And that's going to be important to look at, because that's going to give us a lot of clues, and then look at who is partnering with those people and so on. We're likely to see uprisings, rebellion, people hitting their breaking point as far as restrictions go. So that's going to probably be behind some of the uprisings that we see. But we're also going to start to see where some of the efforts have paid off. So where people have stayed persistent, and they've said, we're not going to just bow down to these really unreasonable restrictions and go from there. So I think we're going to start to see some of the breakthroughs. We're going to start to see some of really the payoffs coming around where that sustained effort has been getting put in. So that's going to be interesting to see. Now, in January in particular, I talked about our mind not being clear. Definitely on a personal level, I don't suggest signing contracts. We're going to have to watch what happened in the Middle East, for example, because on one hand, they're very aligned with the codes, because it's about following or moving towards a more peaceful path, which is favorable in the January codes, but they're also signing contracts under that time. So there may have to be some revisions or adjustments or something made along the way that didn't get caught. They didn't catch it when they first signed the agreements here in the first few days here. We need to focus on finding peaceful paths forward. This is going to be important. Yes, we have to stand our ground. Yes, we have to stand up for our rights, but we want to try to find peaceful ways to do that wherever possible. Is that always possible? No, because when you're dealing with some of the really deep layers of corruption, that sometimes you have to speak their language. You have to get in, and you have to be tough enough to face it. So it's going to be about finding a balance in there a little bit. Independence, freedom, being able to have experiences in life, that is going to become more and more important here in January. As I mentioned, we're probably going to see people getting jolted into reality this month. And that means that they're not going to be able to escape in lies. They're not going to be able to escape the truth. We're going to see some big things come out probably this month that is going to make people go, I had no clue this was going on. So that's something to definitely look at. The leaders coming together this month, that's going to be interesting. Still conflict going on between those that are trying to stand up for freedom and those that are trying to maintain control. So still a lot of that. We're going to see from some of the corrupt areas a big push to what they call sustainable. And what we have to watch for is, on the surface, that might sound really nice, but under the deeper layers, and as you unfold those deeper layers, there's bigger plans. Matter of fact, just the other day, I was doing some catching up on some information from the G20. And one of the big things that they said in there is, well, now we've got to push Agenda 2030 forward quite a bit. So they're going to try to move that. And if people aren't familiar with Agenda 2030, this has various people like Bill Gates and people involved in it. And they're using sustainability. They're going to try to appeal to the environmentalists. They oftentimes will use the terminology, you need to do this for the greater good. And so we're going to have to watch some of that, because they're going to start using that as a means to gain control. Well, now we need to do this, and so now we need to tax you more money. Now we need to do this, and now so they're going to be using that as an excuse for a lot of things, because the other things like the virus are not working so well for them anymore. And so that's there. We're going to, again, see some of the really greedy people starting to collapse, people whose ego get too big and they think they can get away with anything. I think that's also going to be behind maybe some of the areas where people get jolted into reality. That could be one of the trigger points in there. I'm showing weakened immunity, so health concerns. And this is why I say people really need to pay attention to their antioxidants, getting good health, D vitamins, staying up on all the things that's going to make their body really strong. And that doesn't always sound like the fun thing to do, but it's really, really important, because the codes are showing this lowered immunity, which means we're going to be more susceptible to things out there. So it's very interesting that these variant strains are starting to show up around our world all of the sudden, at a time when our bodies are naturally weak to them, not just because it's the winter season or the summer season in the southern hemisphere, but because in the code patterns, we actually have a lowered immunity or a lowered resistance. And that also comes from the stresses, even without the variants coming through. It comes from the stresses, the trauma that people have been living under, that their body can't fight things off the same way. So people that are corrupt, if they're not getting their way, and that's things are not working out in their favor, we're going to see some really strong reactions from them. They're not going to be happy. They're going to put up a fight about it, and that's going to be important in there. Let's see if there's any big other things. There are going to be attempts, and I think we're already seeing that today in the U.S., to throw off the balance of things through rebellion or revolution or war. So again, the corruption likes to use war as a means to feed its own pockets and to keep people in division. And we have to start realizing that, it's not about Republican versus Democrat, Trump, Penn, it's not about these, it's about something bigger. We need to look beyond at the people who are really triggering the wars, who are really triggering the division, who are really creating it, and not just stay on the surface part that they want us to stay in. Again, more lack of integrity coming to the surface this month. So that kind of command battle going on in there. And, we're going to have to be accountable for our choices. And our choices are going to, I think this is where we're going to see some of the fall of leaders coming down because they're going to start being held accountable for things. As we move into February, what we've got is February is going to be one of those months. It's going to feel a little heavier because
It always does.
we're going to have.
No month has the right to have 28 days. You know, why March got too many. Just take one off the end of that. If one of those ones got 31, just like take like 2 or 3 of them off. So like February can have like 30 days. You know, there's no need for this. You can have 30 days. Not leap year. You can have 31. You know, I don't like February. I've had many bad things have happened to me in February actually. So I've lost some good people in February. So I hate February. Anyway, continue, please.
Yeah, February is a tough month, but part of this is it's asking us to buckle down and meet our responsibilities and obligations. So it's really kind of a working month. We're going to have to really put in the energy. We're going to need to put in the effort. It can be a good time for us to tackle really big projects, but we need to consider what can we do on our own. You might be able to paint a room on your own, but you may not be able to completely reconstruct and move walls around on your own, for example. So we need to kind of weigh that out. We need to make sure that we are really listening to our inner self, our soul self, that we are doing what is best for us instead of just following the crowd or instead of just listening to what other people are telling us to do. In the first half of the month, we're going to see that advancement is a big priority. There's going to be a big push to advance things, I would say, during that time in February. There's going to be a lot of emphasis on clearing up what is blocking the success. So again, that ties right in with the advancement. It's a time of completing initiations and tests. So some of these battles that have been going on and along the way, hopefully are going to be getting cleaned up in that first couple of weeks of February. If we persist, we can see the breakthroughs, but we've got to persist. We need to focus on the breakthrough instead of breaking down. February is going to be that time, particularly the first half of it, where, you know, right as you get to the end and right as you're on the edge of a breakthrough, you wonder if you've got enough energy to see it through. Sometimes you just want to walk away and give up. And what I have to say is don't give up. Hang in there because it's there. The breakthrough is there if you persist with it. As we look at the last, from like around the 19th, you know, the second half of the month, basically, we're going to see a lot of conflict coming up for people, particularly conflict between materialism and the soul self. So we might see a lot of people starting to go, you know, should I go ahead and get this shot and work for this company because I need the dollar and I need that income? Or, you know, do I stand strong and follow my soul's path and what's really important to me and not sacrifice my values and my ethics and things like this? So there are going to be a lot of decisions around money versus fulfillment. And, you know, I say there's different things that work at different points, but you've got to really consider, you know, what's going to make it through the long run, you know, what you can deal with. Every person has to make that decision on their own. We will see some tension, some breaking down arising where people are just, you know, are in that struggle. It's gonna be tough. There's gonna be some tensions around that. There's money tensions probably showing up in that second half of February, and we need to look really about how we remove that struggle, which means how can we lighten up, for example, financial obligations and responsibilities. You know, is there something that we could free up in our life, let go of, so that it doesn't place the extra financial burden on us in things? You know, we may not need as much as we want to. And I think more and more people are going to be gravitating towards quality of life. And that's really what it's coming down to, is quality of life. And they're going to start reevaluating, saying, you know what, I don't really need these 5 things over here. I don't need to be spending money on that. I'd rather be out having fun in life. I'd rather be out having an experience in life. So that's kind of coming through. this is a big month where we need to take command of our own life. We need to stand strong in integrity. And those who lack integrity, the more something is out of integrity, the more likely we are to see it crash coming down. So that's all throughout the month that could happen. We're going to see a lot of danger surface where freedom is restricted. And there's going to be a two-edged thing happening here. On one hand, this is going to drive people more towards self-sufficiency because they don't want somebody else to have control over the freedom that they have. But those who try to clamp down with stronger and stronger restrictions are more likely to see a backlash. We're more likely to see danger arise in some shape or form around that. We're also going to want to pay attention to weather patterns and not take chances because, well, Richard might want to go out and chase some storms. I don't know, but but we're definitely going to have some unexpected storm patterns. This could go two ways. I see it in my area where they say, oh, yeah, you're going to have 9 inches of snow, and then it fizzles down and we get like 1 inch. But it can go the other way, and they could say, well, there's 9 inches of snow, and then we end up with 2 feet. So we don't want to take chances where weather is involved. I do see that there is going to be some trauma coming up for people. It's probably going to be, again, directly connected to the choices they've been making along the way. And there's going to be some sudden shifts, some sudden changes that things are going to come up that we just couldn't have planned for. We couldn't have prepared for. And all we can really do is find the inner peace and ride with the situation. And again, start making those choices. Well, what can place me in a position of greater self-sufficiency? What can, place me to where I'm not so dependent on everybody else? So I think that could even become something that we see in the world news, Jared, is this aspect of countries even perhaps considering how can we become more self-sufficient as a country on our own. And looking to our own internal resources than relying on every other country out there to take care of us and provide for our needs. So that could be something that comes up in the news. Lots of major transformation. I am showing death codes at this time. You said, you've personally experienced that with family. Lots of endings. This could be physical death. This could be mental, emotional things coming to completion. So it could be a variety of things.
I had the death card come up in the tarot last night. I did a tarot reading and I had a death card come up in that. So, and just even in practical things, Jesse used to have an aunt that would say, if you could make it through February, you could make it the rest of the year because, that's like the hardest month. It is. Winter. It's true. It's true. That's the biggest challenge of the month. The winter month to get through, and that's when back in the prairie days and the colonial days, that was the biggest. I've always challenging month to get through. I've always said my favorite day of the year is March the 1st because it's the longest possible time before more February. Those of you guys who follow us on the channel know that one of the people I work with in spirit is my brother, but it was actually in February my brother passed away, and I lost my dad in February as well. So a lot of upheaval in February. I it's not so harsh anymore. I tend to sort of get through it and it doesn't have the effect on me it used to. But you asked me about 4 or 5 years ago, I would still be in this. I hated February. Probably about 6 or 7 years ago now. I've got the last sort of like half a decade. I've kind of been a lot more easier with it. But how can I put this? Pre-2012, I absolutely detested February, and I would loathe having it come round each year, which wasn't really good for my disposition. And I think that's absolutely natural, and I think we're in times where it is hard. Anytime you lose somebody, that first year in particular, but when you have people that are really close to you, that can surface.
Also in February, we're going to have to really be on guard because I'm showing a lot of mind control energy coming up during that month. I'm seeing a lot of people struggling to keep their sanity during that month, which is going to be very challenging. So people need to, again, they need to really look at who their connections are that are positive for them, who are the people that can be their support system for them, and make sure that they're reaching out to those people if they feel themselves struggling at all. But I think that using craziness as a narrative could come out on a more public or in the news range. Again, I think we're going to see a stronger prevalence of mind control tactics being used. And why is that going to surface? Well, because whenever a faction of corruption is losing control, they're going to seek to use whatever methods they can to regain that control. And I think mind control is going to be one of the few tactics that they have left to work with. And really what it's going to come down to is it's about traumatizing people. If they traumatize people, they become easier to control. They become easier to convince them to go in the direction that they want. So we're going to have to be very, very on guard for that in February as well. And again, our relationships are going to be very, very critical. So this can bring some challenges in family aspects, but it's going to be important to meet and fulfill the obligations you have, whether that is to family, to partnerships. If you don't like those situations, then bring them to an end and start to seek out whatever peaceful solutions you can unfold and open up. And then as we move into March is where we start to hit that stagnation energy. So for some people, they'll sit back and go, oh, thank goodness I can, I can catch my breath now. And yet for other people, they may feel a little bit of nervousness coming up at that time, a little, it might be hard. They might feel a little frustration coming up. But the stagnation is really about telling us we need to stop, look, observe, and refocus our attention on what's really, really important. We want to really put our attention on walking in divine alignment, walking that spiritual path, walking with the heart-centered energy. And we really want to take that time as well to look into the roots that we're fighting for. What are we really standing up for? And is this really important? And what part of it is important? Or am I now just wrapped in a battle of fighting for the sake of fighting? These are the questions that we're going to want to ask. And we will see blocks come up where from those areas where divine is not present. So again, the corruption is going to try to throw up a lot of blocks. They're going to try to inhibit the forward momentum of things. So whether that's a person in your life or whether that's something in the world, if you're making all kinds of progression and you're working in divine alignment, you may find people that step up and try to block your path in some way in there. And one of the ways that they may do that is they may try to separate people more. They may try to create divisions and partnerships. So, you very easily could see these struggles going on of whether people can trust the people in their life. Can they trust the partnerships that are around them? And this is the month that we're going to really have to stop and take a look and say, okay, it's time to set aside our differences. We got to set aside our differences and we're going to have to come together. We're going to have to come back into what is ethical, what is in integrity, and what needs to be present for us to move forward. So during the first half of the month, this is the time where we're going to see more of true leaders stepping forward. We're going to see them stepping up. So maybe even people who haven't thought of themselves as leaders might be stepping up and leading something at that time. Again, stress and tension can rise in the last half of the month. And mostly I think that's going to be pressure that we're going to feel from trying to meet our responsibilities and obligations in the world. It's going to be the pressure that comes with trying to get through things, trying to handle things in our life. But also in that last half of March, we're very likely to be taken out of our comfort zone in some way. And I'm kind of laughing because I don't even want to think what that could be connected to
Oh
with what we
God.
see go down
Probably
in our
aliens.
world. Like what is going to take us out of that comfort zone?
It's
So-
gotta be aliens. It's gotta be.
So enjoy the break, but don't get complacent in that break. I guess is the thing, and part of that is because we're going to go into new things in that second half of March. So we're going to be stepping into some unknown territory, some uncertain territory. Again, we're going to have to that month watch out for the lies, watch out for the deceptions, the manipulations, because that's going to be used to break up partnerships. It's going to be used to be like the little kid who tries to pit their mom and dad against each other type of thing. So breaking up those partnerships, and we need to really be careful to align with what is going to create freedom and not restriction for ourselves during that time. We want to focus on what our self needs. So again, come back to what do you personally need for your own life, and stop worrying about what everybody else is telling you need to be doing. You got to look at what's going to work for you. Lots of shifts and changes happening in that first half of the month. We're going to see maybe some results, some things happening where we've made some wise choices. But we're also going to see false relationships exposed at that time. So that's going to be another piece that we'll probably see come out in the news. And there's going to be a lot of push at that time also to, in the first half of the month, to try to squash freedom, to squash rights. And that goes right in with that stuck, stagnant, throwing up block energy in there. So we're going to have to be really on that. We're going to have to be willing to sit back, observe, have some patience. Again, our health is going to be a little fragile at that time. So we want to make sure, don't wait till the last minute to try to do something. It's like, don't wait until you catch the cold to take care of your health. Start taking care of it now. So we kind of want to get in that pattern now and not, let ourselves drop off too much as far as keeping our health, our immunity up, because it is going to be another fragile time physically. I think we're going to see a lot of financial struggles going on at that time. And I think more people are going to be craving the authenticity. They're going to be looking for transparency, for honesty, for integrity, for truth. And even though that can bring some challenges or come through some hard things, that truth shows up, I think the good thing is more people will be looking for truth at that time. And so those are my key pieces for the upcoming 3 months. And so, yeah.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you.
It's a lot. There's a lot to take in. Well, I just wanted to cover something. It was on the chat. It was about the truth is tricky, and it was from ZX8 1v2, I believe.
Rich, before you do that, we are actually getting chat, are we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not. Oh, I've not been seeing any chat. I've been wondering what the hell's going on because I've not seen a single comment. Go on, carry on with what you were saying. I'll redo it now. Sorry, I must have had a glitch on my end. Go on.
No worries. Yeah, basically, I think what we got to look for in the coming months and in light of all this is the people or the president or the outcome that loves us. Right? So if anybody's putting information out there that creates divide or does seem to have an agenda, right, I'm pretty sure it's void of love. Anything that wants to give us freedom or give us choice of opportunity or put us in a place where there's no, what's the word, like cost for them or anything like that, that's the path that we have to choose. It's the one that is the least resistant. And I think in that is there is truth. And I think if you're going to go through this year now, as we've just seen what happened in 2020, I think it's that you've got to find where is the love, and where it is the people. We've got people standing up against these laws. And yeah, I've seen a lot of negativity towards them because they're not wearing masks, right? But they're fighting for something. They're fighting for freedom. And just like you see in the NHS, they're putting themselves on the line against something they're being told is real. And I think anywhere you look and there's someone trying to do something for you without any cost is where the truth is in regards to this. I mean, if you look at the governments, they've made billions out of this virus. Billions, right? Whether they've said they're not getting costs for it. I mean, we've given over, I think it's £100 billion the UK has put into this vaccine. 93 billion, I think it is. So that's the route you need to take if you want to kind of skim on the truth. There's a lot of disinformation. There's a lot of he said, they said, she said, we said, but that's the outcome you're looking for. And it's the only course of action we've got, because the information at the moment is just so diluted and insane. I mean, you're gonna get caught up in it. And if you're not, like, I've had opportunities to look for information over the years, and Spirit have put me in them positions, and I've been lucky. And it's not always easy, and it's a hell of a rabbit hole to go down. It's not one I've ever recommended to everyone that I've ever told, if you're going to go down there, you're going to have a problem. They've had a problem. So it's not, I don't recommend it, but to find the truth, the real truth, you've got to look at whoever in history. And that goes for, that goes from this person to that person. Anybody in history has ever tried to make peace in this world, look at the outcome they've had, and look at the place they were coming from, and look at what they're backing up. And then you'll find the truth. And that's the best advice I can give you in light of everything at the moment, from my point of view. And hopefully, Jess, we'll get through the next 3 months. Hopefully.
Well, and I think that's a great points that you're making, Richard. And I always come back to the aspect of, if you're not certain, observe. These are times that we should not take things at face value, again, because of all that deception energy that's present and running through our world. And it's going to continue to run through our world for quite a bit of time to run. It's one of the bigger constant aspects. And so you want to peel back the layers and realize that not everybody is as they seem. You need to look at their actions. You need to observe for a while. We have a lot of what we call sleepers in powerful positions or in different positions around the world. And these are the people who have been existing, pretending to be one way, and they're actually completely different. And so really we have to, the more we sit in that observation, the more that we sit in objectiveness instead of getting too wrapped up in the drama. And again, I understand that it's not always convenient to do all of this research. And do you have to go research every detail and fall down rabbit holes? No, you don't.
Yeah.
But verify things, to question things. And I've taken slack even in the truther communities from some things, because I call people out on their stuff. And I tell them, look, you're not basing this on fact. Stop the stories, because this is not helping people. We're here to get the truth out to people, not to perpetuate stories about things. And you can believe them all you want, but we're just, we're not helping any of that. And I think that that's where we have to come together. It doesn't matter where you are, what your position is. The biggest things you got to be standing for is integrity, transparency, truth, honesty. Look at the actions people are taking. Yes, I understand some of the actions are confusing and deceiving, and there's optics involved. but we really have to call out even the good guys, so to say, even the people that are trying to bring the corruption down. We have to be willing to call them out as much as we're willing to call out the corruption and say, look, I get that we need to do this, but we've got to also stand in integrity in that process. You know, it's the same thing like what we're seeing in America right now. I understand that we have to get to this point, but we need to follow the Constitution to do it, and not all of these other little pieces that have been put in place to disrupt the Constitution.
Yeah. Well, if you look at it, like in our country, we had the Tories and we had Labour, right? And we had a leader who I had watched his background, and I watched him stand on a soapbox and speak for rights and independence and better wages and better equality. And then I saw this, and they were just money mad morons, and they got voted in. Right? You have two candidates. Look at the good they have tried to put in the world. Go back through their history. Look at the communities they've supported. Look at the money they've put in there with no gain. And this is how you got to everything we do from this moment on. You have to weigh it up against action. We said this on this channel many times. There's no candidates in my heart that I would put my faith in. There's none, as I can see it, that haven't come from money. And having that amount of money, you are unfortunately devoid of a real world sense, because you've never been in that position. You've never known what it's like to go hungry. You never know what it's like to not be able to pay your bills. You never know what it's like to be, cast aside or treated unequally. You don't know what it's like. And until, how can you stand for something that is common to everyone when you've not got a clue what it feels like? And this is where we have to come at this. We have to stand up and really pay attention to the details and do background checks. And you've got to, guys. Otherwise, honestly, it's going to be a shit show. I promise you.
You have to also find within this, and as you guys have said, and I'm going to say this now, is that you have to go along with what you trust and who you trust, and mainly the trust that you have within yourself as well, and what your principles are and what you want. I always say to people, expectation creates limitation. And always trust your own connection, because your own connection may take you, and this happens with us as well. My connection might be slightly different to Richard, might be slightly different to Anne's, but we all have our own journeys to go on here. And at the end of the day, ultimately, this channel is not about telling people what to think. It's not about telling people what the outlook of the world is going to be. It's about having that discussion and taking on that journey. The point of this channel is to be a companion piece for that journey. We hope when we produce these videos, when we produce these podcasts, when we produce these contacts, these things, that they will strike a chord with you. That they will strike a chord with maybe what you're going through. We, at the end of the day, will struggle to understand maybe some of the things that you have gone through, and maybe why you believe what you believe. But what we mean by standing in truth is standing in that space of love, standing in that space where you realize that you don't have to be in a place where someone has to go without for you to have. There are things that can happen. There are opportunities to be had even in the darkest times. The thing is, what people forget is light only shines in darkness. And there has to be a balance in everything. Not every choice we make is going to be easy. Not every choice we make is going to be applauded. It's not going to be approved by all our friends and our peers. Sometimes we have to make the choice that is going to benefit in the long term. And that has to be a personal decision. And that's why we do it. That's why we've put this content out. That's why we do what we do, because we are just trying. We do it because it helps us as well. So it's that way of connecting, because unless we start to connect, unless we start to find a neutral understanding of the things that are going on in our world, how can we ever hope to do anything about it? Or how can we ever, for us personally, yes, we talk about, all the different issues and stuff, but our focus has always been on the paranormal. It's in the channel, because of the ITC work, because of the investigation work, and because of the psychic work and all the rest of it. But that doesn't mean that, we can't, work with people that perhaps work in the historical, or work in the entertainment, or work in whichever way, shape, or scientific, whichever way, shape, or form. This is about building an understanding, and just even if it's one iota, if it's one breadcrumb and a fish finger's worth, it's worth something. It has value. So guys, we are coming to the end of the show. It's now 10 o'clock here in the UK. So, do we have any final words that you guys would like to give?
No, I think we said it all.
I'm gonna hold the book up really quick for everybody to see. In case anybody wonders, this book has year, month, day, etc. And and it's just a huge resource of information. You can get it no matter what part of the world that you're in. And compassioncodes.com is my website. On there, you'll see a tab that says the goods tab, and you'll see the code journey under that. And that's got all the links directly into where you can the 650, 700 page book, which I put out every year of insights. But as Jared was mentioning, this is not about this work or anything in our world. It's not about forcing somebody to believe the way you believe. You can present truths out there, you can present information to them, but it's got to be their choice whether they want to take it or not. And this book does a lot to get the mind open, to ask questions, to help live in a more divine, so to say, to be standing in those divine principles. It gets us to ask questions, and that's really what I encourage people to do. Just don't take things for face value, and things apply differently to each person because we're each getting different sides of the same experience many times. And so it's about opening our mind up and just realizing that, again, it's not so much about making somebody believe the way that we believe, but getting them to start to ask questions about things and to look at that bigger aspect, that the one thing that we cannot afford to give up in this world is choice, possibilities, and opportunity. And so when you really look at it, say, who is offering more freedom and who is restricting freedom, but don't look at it from just the surface of things. Again, be open to possibilities, because people could be on one side of the fence one day and on another side of the fence the next day. And if you're the person, you're going to be swaying back and forth too. So it comes back to, take a look at the values and then stand by those values. And if person A is in those values one day, support that. If person B is in the value, and look at it and realize it's about supporting the values and not the individuals.
Exactly. And all the links to Anne's material is in the description down below and is in the connecting code videos. In the next couple of days, the code video for January, if we just want to have a guided video for January, will be up on this channel. But I also encourage you to check out Anne's Anne's personal channel. Sorry, I'm losing my mind slightly here. Not thinking clearly, as you said, quite rightly. Anne's own channel, which is Connecting Codes. And guys, that book is very much worth a purchase. It's also available on Amazon and, as Anna said, on her website. And all those links are in the description down below. and it is really, really interesting. It's really in depth, and it is like a daily sort of guide that you can use. And I've used it. I know Richard has used it as well. So this is a thing that it can be of benefit to people. But hey, it's just up to you guys to have a look. Thank you very much for watching the show. Please do, if you found this useful, share it with your friends and family, and we'll see you probably Sunday now for the next Now Debate, and there'll be some videos hopefully coming up in between. Any final words, guys?
No, that's it. We love and light para peeps as always, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you, Anne, for coming on. And let's see what's next. Let's see. Hopefully, you'll be able to do more codes now if you make it.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you guys always, because I love showing up here every month and, talking with you guys about things that are happening in the world.
Are you going to join us for
providing that good perspective?
Absolutely. Are you join us for the first week of February?
Yep, absolutely. I've got it in my calendar.
There you go.
Everything's down. Your first Wednesday of the month is reserved for you guys. And,
excellent. Well, thank you guys. We love you all.
For me, and I really appreciate everybody that tunes in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
And
yeah.
Honestly, I'm not going to ask you to subscribe to our channel, because you probably are if you come across. Go over to Anne's channel and show us some love. Tell Jad and Richard sent you. Thank you very much, guys. See you soon. Bye for now.
Thank you.